If clowns must rule, let the comedians take the throne. The Zerga Manifesto, live and uncensored. House lights low. A flicker. The sound system hums like a dying refrigerator. I walk out from the side of the stage like a man who just escaped from a group therapy session he never signed up for. The sign above the bar says, Open Mic Night, but it feels more like Judgment Day with better drink specials. I adjust the mic stand. It resists. Of course it does. You ever notice the truth never walks into the room clean and dignified? It stumbles in like a drunk uncle at Thanksgiving, knocking over the lamp and asking who changed the Wi-Fi password. That's what Western politics feels like to me. Not a noble civic process. Not the sacred dance of democracy. No, it feels like a Jerry Springer episode got drunk and hooked up with WWF Monday Night Raw, and their illegitimate child grew up to run the G7. Leans on the mic stand, scanning faces. Let's start here. Democrats, Republicans, Labor, Tories, pick your flavor. They act like they're mortal enemies, locked in this epic struggle of ideas, like Zeus fighting Hades on top of Mount Olympus. But in practice, no matter who you vote for, the policy stays the same. Higher taxes, higher inflation, perpetual war. There's always a boogeyman. If it's not terrorists, it's Russia. If it's not Russia, it's China. If it's not China, it's a virus. If it's not a virus, it's your neighbor's opinions. The names change, the script doesn't. We live under a system where the logo on the box changes every 4 years, but the ingredients list is the same. Corn syrup, debt, bombs, and a sprinkling of shame. You vote blue, here's your war with a rainbow logo. You vote red, here's your war with a bald eagle screaming in the background. Either way, somebody's getting drone struck for freedom. Pauses, pacing. If the Western world is going to be run by clowns anyway, and it is, we've seen the footage, then I say we make the actual comedians run the countries. At least then, when everything collapses in a flaming heap of derivative debt and broken promises, we'll get a tight 10-minute set out of it. I'm dead serious. I want politics officially merged with stand-up. They're already cousins. One sells you jokes with a grain of truth. The other sells you lies with a thin film of sincerity. Not much difference. Let's go all in. Put Eddie Izzard in as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Full drag, full honesty, full surreal commentary. And in the United States, Eddie Murphy is president. Red leather suit or navy blue power suit, doesn't matter. The SNL cast fills in the cabinet. Lorne Michaels runs the deep state. At least when we bomb the wrong country, we'll get a good cold open out of it. Stops. Looks at someone in the front row. You voted last time, didn't you? Yeah, you. Don't look away. You stood in line, you wore the sticker, you took the selfie. I did my civic duty. You believed, maybe just a little, that this time it might make a difference. And what did you get? Higher taxes, groceries that cost like you're shopping on a space station, gas prices that feel like you're funding your own hostage negotiation. And somewhere, some politician goes on TV and says, we're all in this together. Really? Because my electric bill says I'm in this alone, champ. Here's the hyper-rational take. Our political system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. It's not there to represent you. It's there to manage you. Like a zookeeper rotating the animals so they don't figure out the fences aren't really that tall. You're not a citizen, you're a revenue stream with a voting ritual attached. Leans into the mic, and then we get to inflation. They talk about it like it's weather. Inflation is rising, as if it tripped over a rock and just sort of happened. Inflation isn't weather, it's robbery. If I come to your house, eat 20% of your food and leave, you don't call that a supply chain issue. You call it a crime. But when central banks print oceans of money, your paycheck shrinks in real time, and they call it quantitative easing. That's not easing anything but their conscience. That's the soft language George Carlin warned us about. It's not theft, it's liquidity injection. Yeah, feels like a mugging with extra steps. And the wars. Oh, the wars. We always have money for wars. You ever notice that? You ask for healthcare, they clutch their pearls. How will we pay for it? You ask for basic infrastructure, they faint on camera. The budget, the deficit, but suggest bombing somebody on the other side of the planet, and suddenly there's a platinum card with no limit. Don't worry, we'll find the funding. They always do. Somehow there's always a spare billion to lob metal at strangers. Now, on the surface, this looks like incompetence. It's not. It's ritual. Stops pacing. Stares off, like seeing something bigger beyond the bar wall. This is where we pivot. from the mundane to the metaphysical. Because this isn't just about bad policy. It's about bad gods. You ever read Enoch? Those Nephilim giants roaming around, hybrid monstrosities birthed from fallen angels and human madness. Those aren't just ancient myths. That's brand identity. That's the original ruling class right there. The bloodline of the bully. Fast forward a few thousand years, and their descendants don't carry spears, they carry central banking charters and private jets. The old gods outsourced the thrones to corporate boards. Zecharia Sitchin says we were engineered by the Anunnaki as workers. David Icke says the elites are shapeshifting reptilians. Joseph P. Farrell ties secret Nazi physics to the black budgets funding half these wars. You can argue the details, but the pattern holds. There's a control system sitting above the visible one, and politics is just the HR department for the empire. And that feeling you get scrolling the news, the dread, the anxiety, the stomach knot, that little scream in your soul. That's called loosh, baby. That's energy. That's a harvest. Every time you panic about elections, wars, debt ceilings, culture wars, and whoever shouted at whoever on social media today, you're broadcasting fuel into the invisible grid. And the archons, the bureaucrats of the unseen world, sip that stuff like it's an expensive cocktail. You think CNN and Fox are there to inform you? No, they're there to keep the loosh fountains turned all the way up. Points at an imaginary TV. Every time you see breaking news, read it as breaking you. And our precious two-party system. That's not democracy. That's theater. It's Hegelian dialectic for dummies. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Problem, reaction, solution. Team Red says, we must invade this country to defend freedom. Team Blue says, we must invade that country to protect human rights. And guess what? The bombs fall either way. The stock of the same defense contractors goes up either way. The only thing that changes is the branding on the missile. One calls it Operation Liberty Storm. The other calls it Operation Compassion Shield. Same shrapnel, different font. It's like Coke versus Pepsi. You argue about which one is better while they both rot your teeth and give you diabetes. The House always wins, and the House is not Congress. The House is the central banks, the defense industry, the energy cartels, the think tanks, the Davos conference rooms where billionaires circle a globe and take turns picking what to ruin next. You're not invited. You're not even on the catering staff. You're the livestock outside the fence, paying admission. So here's my modest proposal. If we're stuck in a circus, then we demand that the real clowns take the ring. I want the comedians in charge. Because at least comedians admit they're lying to you. Politicians lie and call it policy. Comedians tell the truth and call it a joke. Those are the people I trust. Let me repaint Britain for you. Imagine the United Kingdom with Eddie Izzard as Prime Minister. Adjusts an imaginary pearl necklace, sips imaginary tea. Eddie walks into Parliament in heels sharper than the national debt curve. The opposition leader rises, veins popping in his forehead, Mr. Prime Minister, what is your plan for the economy? And Eddie just smiles. I have absolutely no idea, darling. But I do know that the last 10 prime ministers also had no idea, they just hid it behind graphs. At least I look fabulous while we improvise. There's honesty for you. A politician who admits they don't know what they're doing. That alone would cause a dimensional tear in Westminster. Negotiating Brexit, Eddie wouldn't show up with white papers and stiff posture. He'd show up with the cake or death routine. Europe, my loves, we're here for one thing, cake or death. A good trade deal and we all get cake. Sanctions and drama, that's death. Well, not literal death. Just the slow economic death you've been practicing since 2008. But I brought cake, so let's be adults. He'd replace the Speaker of the House with a badger in a wig because badgers are tenacious and less corrupt than most of you. And the thing is, it wouldn't be any more absurd than what's already happening. The current system already is a Monty Python sketch, it just doesn't know it's a comedy. At least Eddie would lean in. Now, cross the Atlantic. America, land of the free and home of the perpetually marketed. We don't need another bland manager in a blue suit. We need charisma. We need someone who can stare down dictators and make them laugh at themselves. We need Eddie Murphy as President of the United States. Not family-friendly movie Eddie. I'm talking 1983 delirious Eddie in that red leather suit, chewing gum, grinning like a man who knows the whole crowd is his. Struts across the stage like Murphy, shoulders loose, pacing. Inauguration Day. The Chief Justice stands there, all solemn, asking, do you swear to preserve protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Eddie grabs the mic. Man, I swear I'm gonna try. But y'all been ignoring it for decades, so let's not act brand new. Crowd goes wild. Honesty. Again. Radical. Imagine him in the Situation Room. Generals leaning over maps, voice grave. Mr. President, North Korea is rattling sabers again. Eddie leans back in the resolute desk chair, feet propped up. Put Kim on speaker. Let me talk to this man. Mimes phone to ear. Hey, Kim, listen, man, I saw your haircut. You can't launch a missile looking like a rejected Lego character. Walk away from the button and toward a barber. We'll talk sanctions after the fade. You think Kim's gonna know what to do with that? There's no script in their war games for getting roasted by the president. That's not sanctions diplomacy, that's yo mama diplomacy. Nuclear tension drops 30% instantly. He'd handle press conferences like a stand-up set. CNN asks, Mr. President, what are you going to do about the deficit? Eddie, I'm gonna do what all of you do with credit card bills, pretend it's not there and keep the party going. Honest, painful, funny. That's healthier than the current gaslighting. And of course, he'd need a cabinet. Enter the SNL government. Secretary of Transportation, Chris Farley, resurrected courtesy of AI in bad taste. Infrastructure announcement, he crashes through the podium screaming about living in a van down by the river because the bridge collapsed. Boom, suddenly everyone cares about the potholes. Press Secretary, Bill Hader is Stefan. The White House's hottest new initiative is Infrastructure Palooza. It has everything. Crumbling roads, confused contractors, a mayor in a reflective vest who doesn't know how shovels work, and a raccoon that somehow runs the zoning office. You wouldn't learn anything, but you'd stop pretending you were ever told the truth before. Director of the CIA, Dan Aykroyd, cigarette in hand, briefing room smoky. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosts are real, UFOs are confirmed, and half your senators are possessed by Class 5 vapor demons. Don't panic, that's why we have proton packs. That's more transparency than the actual agency has ever provided. Secretary of Defense, Will Ferrell is George W. Bush, just to keep adversaries guessing. We got straightgery, people. You don't want none of this straightgery. Enemies are too confused to invade. You see the pattern. Comedy doesn't hide the chaos, it names it. It puts a red nose on the monster and points. That's more honest than 1,000 solemn speeches. But here's the part that messes with my head. Why does this nightmare of comedians running everything sound more sane than what we have now? Why does it feel like a relief? Because the current reality is a script written by someone who hates you. And hates your clarity. And hates your joy. Lights dim slightly in your mind's eye, the bar feels narrower. I lower my voice. This isn't just a broken government. It's a broken ritual. Politics is a church where the priest stopped believing in God but kept passing the collection plate. The whole left-right game. That's the liturgy. It keeps you chanting, keeps you emotionally invested. You argue with your neighbor about which color tie your overlord should wear while the real decisions get made in rooms you'll never see. It's they live. Roddy Piper puts the sunglasses on and suddenly all the billboards say obey, consume, marry and reproduce. I want you to imagine those glasses on right now. You're watching a politician on TV. My fellow citizens, we need to tighten our belts and make tough choices. Glasses off, it looks like concern. Glasses on, the subtitle reads, you pay, we play. You see a headline, new military action to defend democracy abroad. Glasses on, ongoing human sacrifice to maintain stock prices. You see an ad for the latest smartphone, faster, smarter, more connected. Glasses on, surveillance device with games. We're in the Matrix, but the machines aren't harvesting your body heat, they're running on your attention. That's the currency now. That's why it's called paying attention. You pay with your focus, your emotions, your time. In exchange, you get anxiety, outrage, and carefully curated despair. Great deal, huh? Talk politics with a hardcore partisan sometime. Look in their eyes. There's no one home, just scripts. Orange man bad, sleepy guy bad, vote blue no matter who. Make America great again. It's all call and response in the church of manufactured enemies. You think you're reasoning with a person, you're arguing with a downloaded program. NPCs wandering around, bumping into each other, reciting hashtags. Carl Jung would look at this mess and say, ah, the shadow has taken over the theater. None of these people have integrated anything. The politicians are split egos wearing masks, persona on camera, shadow in the private jet. The voters project everything they hate about themselves onto the other side. They're the fascists. No, they're the communists. Meanwhile, they both support the same surveillance state, the same banks, the same wars, different flags, same cage. And the cage is lined with euphemisms. That's where the real dark magic lives, language. That's why it's called spelling. You cast spells with it. They don't say, bombed a village, they say, collateral damage. They don't say, bribery, they say, lobbying. They don't say, we're spying on you, they say, the Patriot Act, like it's a Marvel movie. They don't say, poor, they say, economically disadvantaged. They don't say, stupid, they say, low information voter. It's all Febreze on a manure pile. Lavender-scented horse SHT is still horse SHT. So what do? Riot. They love riots. Great for ratings. Great for loosh. More fear, more control. Vote harder. Yeah, go ahead, pound that elevator button. Maybe the doors will magically open onto a better floor this time. No, our first weapon is ridicule. Tyrants hate being laughed at. The devil can't stand mockery. Politicians want to be Caesar, Napoleon, Churchill, Moses. They don't want to be the punchline. So we make them the punchline. Non-stop, relentlessly, until the mystique crumbles and all that's left is a middle manager in a suit trying to read a teleprompter. And that brings us to the bonus round. Let's take this all the way. Let's imagine, just for one glorious, deranged moment, that tomorrow morning the comedians actually took over the West. Lights shift in your mind. New scene, same voice. The sun rises on London. Big Ben doesn't chime, it coughs. Westminster is surrounded by news vans and confused pigeons. Overnight, by some cosmic clerical error, or divine prank, the entire British government has been replaced by comedians. Eddie Izzard steps out of number 10 Downing Street in a killer dress, high heels, and a tie just to confuse everybody. Cameras flash like artillery. He approaches the podium. Good morning, Britain. I woke up today and found out I'm Prime Minister. I blame all of you. You left the universe unattended. His first executive order, no more lying by omission. If we don't know what we're doing, we will say so. If we mess up, we will confess. And if we're going to raise your taxes, we will at least bring cake. Parliament gathers. Instead of the usual roar of rehearsed outrage, the speaker announces, order, order, today's debate topic, admitting we are making half of this up as we go. Laughter breaks out. Half the MPs walk out. The other half sit down and, for the first time in decades, talk like human beings. Eddie introduces the cake or death principle into fiscal policy. If a measure helps people, cake. If it harms them, death. Well, political death, at least. Voting records are displayed on giant screens with GIFs. Those who vote for nonsense get a clown horn sound effect. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Washington, D.C. wakes up with a hangover and a plot twist. Eddie Murphy is sworn in on the steps of the Capitol. The Bible he swears on is sandwiched between a copy of the Constitution and a worn-out VHS of Coming to America. I, Eddie, do solemnly swear to try not to screw this up worse than it already is, and to tell you when I do. The crowd roars. Somewhere, an archon winces. First order of business. He cancels every lobbyist meeting for the week and replaces them with open mic town halls. You wanna influence policy? Grab a mic. 5 minutes. Make your case. If you bore us, no bill for you. Politicians are forced to listen. Some even flinch as regular people describe their lives without a teleprompter. Chris Farley, resurrected as Secretary of Transportation, holds his first press conference in the White House briefing room. He barrels onto the stage, trips over a stack of reports, and slams into the podium. Papers fly everywhere. So, you want high-speed rail, huh? Well, I used to. Live in a van, down by the river, because the bridge collapsed and no one fixed it. By the end, Congress votes unanimously to fix every structurally deficient bridge in America just so Chris will stop screaming. Bill Hader's Stefan takes the press secretary job. Every briefing becomes a surreal guided tour of government insanity. Washington's hottest new crisis response is Sequesterpalooza. It has everything: panicked staffers, nervous billionaires, a senator hiding in a bathroom, and a debt ceiling that everyone pretends is real but isn't. No information is clarified, but the absurdity is finally visible. Dan Aykroyd walks into the CIA with a proton pack and a file labeled, "Stuff we've been lying about since 1947. He calls a press conference. Yes, there are UFOs. Yes, we call them UAPs now because we like to rename things instead of explaining them. Yes, we've reverse engineered some weird stuff. No, you cannot see it. But you can know this. Half of what scared you was us, and the other half, well, let's just say don't go in the woods alone. Weirdly, the public calms down. Truth, even partial, is less terrifying than endless speculation. At the United Nations, a joint session is held. Eddie Izzard at one podium, Eddie Murphy at the other. The translator booths are in meltdown trying to keep up. They propose the Global Comedy Accord. Article 1. Any nation voting for war must first host a roast where its leaders are publicly mocked by comics from the country they want to bomb. Article 2. If you can't explain your policy in under 10 minutes without lying, you don't get to do it. Article 3. Any politician caught knowingly lying to the public must do community service as a roadie for a touring stand-up show. World leaders shift uncomfortably. The archons fidget. Louche levels plummet. People at home start laughing more and doom scrolling less. News anchors are forced to admit they don't know what's going on half the time. Ratings drop, but sanity rises. The invisible farm loses some of its livestock. Does it fix everything? No. Humans are still human. Greed still exists. Ego doesn't disappear because Chris Farley yelled about potholes. But something important shifts. The spell breaks. The mystique evaporates. People stop treating politicians like priests and start treating them like what they are, employees. Public servants. Replaceable. Roastable. Back in the bar. Back on the small stage. I wipe the sweat from my forehead and look at you. That's the point of all this. Not that comedians literally take office, though I'd buy that ticket, but that we reclaim what they represent, truth through laughter. The ability to say, "This is insane," out loud in a room full of people who have been pretending it's normal. We can't outgun the war machine. We can't outprint the central banks. But we can outlaugh them. We can starve the archons of Louche by refusing to give them our fear on a silver platter. We can stop seeing politicians as our saviors and start seeing them as what they actually are, clumsy actors in a bad reality show. So we laugh, we mock, we expose, we meme, we refuse to take seriously what is fundamentally ridiculous. We put on the metaphorical sunglasses and never take them off again. Because if politics is going to be a joke, and let's be honest, it already is, then it's time we stop being the punchline. I unclip the microphone from the stand. The feedback screeches one last time like the dying howl of an old lie. I hold the mic out for a second, feeling the weight of it, the weight of everything we've just dragged into the light. Zerga, dropping the mic. Thud.